Now, Pablo Picasso is said to have declared, "For me, there are only two kinds of women, goddesses and doormats." And throughout his life, there were dozens, possibly hundreds. But 7 had huge influence on his painting, an exhibition of which opens today at the National Gallery in London. So how did the ones who rose to the position of wife or longish-term mistress have an impact on the great painter's output? Well, Anne Robbins is the curator of the exhibition. Eva Bosch is an artist and writer. Eva, what do you make of this statement about goddesses and doormats? Who fitted which description?
Well, I think that it's always a danger to sort of take a statement out of context because, it's very easy to manipulate, and that's the thing that Picasso suffered the most. And he might have said that women could be either goddesses or doormats, but if we think of it, did he ever paint a doormat? I think all the women he painted, they are either goddesses or they are all sorts of other things, but I don't think that he actually painted any doormats, you see. So, I think that's Picasso talking, not Picasso painting.
How difficult, though, Anne, do you reckon he was to handle for the women who were involved?
Pretty difficult, I would say. It should also be borne in mind that this statement about women being either goddesses or doormats was actually by Françoise Gillot, who was one of his many successive companions in his life. She was with Picasso between the end of the war years, between 1943 up until 1953, and significantly was the only of his women who left him. And I think this is something that should be remembered about her.
So she didn't have much nice to say about it.
Exactly, and by that stage, this is actually quoted from her book, Life with Picasso, which she published in 1964, and she's a book which infuriated the artist very much. So she wouldn't have had a neutral opinion about him.
Now, Fernande Olivier, Eva, was the first major love. What impact did she have on the work?
Well, again, let's not forget that, he meets Fernande Olivier, but the ball is already turning, yeah. And I think that, as we're talking about women, it would be very important to mention a little girl that he met in Galicia, which was called Angeles, and she was, when he was 12, and that he fell madly in love with. And apparently because she belonged to the wrong social background, they could never have even a contact. They were letters exchanged. So you see, let's not forget Angeles as we go through all the women of Picasso, So Fernande Olivier is this Parisian lady, very beautiful, with red hair, that she had been modeling for all sorts of other painters. And but at the same time, Picasso is already sort of cooking something within his painting. And I think Fernande Olivier, in many ways, was this beautiful goddess that all of a sudden becomes his. He goes with her to Gósol, which is this remote town in the mountains in Catalonia. It took 8 hours on a donkey to actually go from the main town to the village. And in there, he continues cooking these sort of ideas, which are they're not only his. Remember that he's not alone in Paris. There are so many
what
other
was
painters.
He developing? Is this when we're moving into the Cubist era?
Yes.
Why
Why
did she influence that?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. But I would say that with Fernande, he had the first solid relationship, serious relationship. All to himself, yeah. So with Fernande, he could draw naked, dressed, standing up, moving around, lying around, So Fernande was, a bit of a sort of an icon, really, and through her, he actually, not only her, but her and everything else that was actually going on at the time, and in all the paintings and drawings he did before. So Fernande was, how would I say, like a sort of a duende that. Duende character, that came in. And it was an inspiration, his love, his girlfriend, that's what Fernande did.
His first wife, Olga Koklova, was very different from the Parisian women he'd been with. She was a Russian dancer.
Yes, indeed.
How did she change his painting?
Well, interestingly, like to an extent, like Fernand, I mean, Picasso's women provided the ground for the most formal and diverse artistic experimentation, and it is probably at its most obvious with Olga. Now we are in 1917. Picasso has become a kind of superstar. Of course, has been the instigator of one of the greatest artistic revolutions ever brought about with Cubism. And he very unexpectedly he returns to line and to a classical way of depicting the motif. He goes to Italy in 1917 with Diaghilev, with the Russian ballet, and there meets this very beautiful ballerina, Olga, who is very different in terms of profile from his previous mistress. She is the daughter of a Tsarist army officer, is very proper, wants to lead a bourgeois life, and is very much the in love with Picasso's charismatic persona, and she has these ideas of social pretensions. She also wants to gain herself some kind of status by being married to this now very successful and increasingly wealthy artist. And what is fascinating is how Picasso adapts his successive styles to the personality of his sitters. And it's when you see one of these very beautiful portrait of Olga of 19. We've got 4 images of her in our exhibition, which opens today, from a magnificent statuesque baser draped in heavy folds of. It's like stone. It's really beyond painting. It's almost 3-dimensional. Up until this portrait of 1923, where you can almost read and see the marriage disintegrating in the way Picasso turns her into this distant, impassible beauty.
There's a woman called Dora Maar who came at the same time as the Spanish Civil War, Eva, and Guernica. What influence did she have on that?
Well, I mean, Dora Maar was a very different character to Olga or to Marie-Thérèse. I mean, Dora Maar, for one thing, she spoke Spanish fluently. So Dora Maar was the first woman that he could communicate in his mother tongue. So that's very important. And as Anne said before, I mean, she was a political figure. She was someone that was well informed. And in many ways, I mean, Dora sort of brought an awful lot of information to Picasso. And so then again, let's not forget that, the Spanish Civil War started in 1936. Picasso is commissioned to do that painting that is supposed to represent Spain in the Paris exhibition. And we got Olga taking these beautiful photographs of all the process of the painting. So, I mean, Dora Maar is extremely connected with Guernica. I mean, and we have this extraordinary record of the making of the painting because Dora was there.
Just finally, and 2 of his lovers killed themselves, 2 had breakdowns. What does that say about the nature of the relationships that he had?
Well, I'm not sure it reflects very well on the artist himself. Also, we very much have to distance ourselves from this cliché that Picasso was cruel towards his wives and mistresses. He was also a great celebrator of their beauty and was fundamentally in love with them, intrigued by what it meant to be a woman, and to an extent his whole work, which is made primarily of depictions of women, is about understanding what women, the female mystery.
Anne Robbins and Eva Porras, thank you both very much. And the exhibition goes on until
the 7th of June.
Thank you very much for being with us.